warm welcome to this unique online celebration of the World Environment Day, taking place under exceptional circumstances. All of us sitting at our home and logging in to have a discussion on a topic which is of the utmost importance to all of us. And we are very lucky to have received participation from the highest levels, both from the European Union and from the Government of India. Very warm welcome to the Secretary from the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, Mr. R.P. Gupta. And we are just waiting for our colleague from the European Commission, Brussels, to join in, Ms. Astrid Schumacher. She is the Director for Global Sustainable Development in the Directorate General for Environment at the European Commission in Brussels. We also have the pleasure and privilege of having Dr. Ajay Mathur, Director General of the Energy and Resources Institute, TERI, joining us as one of the keynote speakers in the first session. So we will begin with the keynote speeches by these three leaders, and then we will have a short Q&A session which will be moderated by my colleague Henriette. Henriette Fagerman is the Environment Counselor at the EU delegation in New Delhi. She will pick out the most important or interesting questions and pose them to the three speakers. So, that's really going to be the first part of the program, and then we will move on to the next one and so on and so forth. So without further ado, I'd like to request Dr. Ajay Mathur to kindly take the floor and set out the stage for today's topic, which is basically the greening of the recovery post the pandemic, and how do we kind of ensure, sustainable development in this world, which is already so constrained for resources. Over to you, Dr. Mathur.
Thank you very much, Anil. It's a pleasure, but first of all, let me welcome Mr. Gupta, Ms. Schumacher, Henriette, and all friends. And I noticed that there is a huge number of people who have joined us. So welcome to all of you. It is interesting that we are celebrating this World Environment Day at a time when all around us, the coronavirus is telling that we have stretched the frontiers of the environment. It asks us to rethink the way we move ahead. It is clear that because of the corona pandemic, there are many, many things that have entered into our own lifestyle. Social distancing, the fact that we are having to do this over the net is clearly one such idea. And while many of us, including Mr. Gupta and I, are in our offices, most people are still at home. It tells us that the new normal is very different from the normal of 2 months ago. It is also very clear, and I think it is clear when you look at the recovery packages announced by the Government of India or for any government in the world that matters, that jobs, sustainable livelihoods, and economic growth are at the heart of all recovery strategies. Where does this take us? I think a key issue is that if we have to have more jobs, if we have to have sustainable livelihoods, if we have to have economic growth, then what binds them all together is resource efficiency. It is essentially do more with less. It is also what binds this with the corona pandemic, because very clearly one of the causes of the corona pandemic was the one resource, land, and the absence of buffers between wild animals and humans led to the zoonotic transfer of this and many other viruses directly from wild animals to humans. Clearly, therefore, we need strategies that can transform the conventional linear way of thinking into one which is circular and therefore prevents resource wastage and the overuse of virgin materials. It is also very clear as we go along that we've all been shaken to our core as far as the length of the supply chains and therefore the vulnerability of those supply chains to the kinds of things that can happen along the entire length can affect all of us. We had become so used to a manufacturing system that was just in time that it is hard to move to a future. Consequently, looking at shorter supply chains, and especially if we are able to do them at least cost, is an issue that is of importance to us. As we look at all of these trends that are emerging, it is clear that we will need to look at enhancing. One, say, if I take the example of steel, one is minimizing the amount of iron ore or coke that goes into making a ton of steel. That's number one. But on the other hand, we also are looking at maximizing the recycling that occurs. If we look at these things together, the minimizing of coal, the minimizing of virgin materials, we are looking at something of the order of 1,000 billion rupees of savings every year because of the use of scrap and the minimization of imports of coking coal. We also look at this time, this is an opportunity for us to look at different processes. Can we move towards resource efficiency? Can we move away from the emphasis only on coking coal to other materials as well? Hydrogen, for example, using it for direct reduction instead of using coking coal, or possibly for many, many years, a mixture of the two. I think there is a huge example that we learn from the mobile phone business. Currently, about 1 million smartphones are retired every year. They enter into the waste stream. These 1 million smartphones have the potential to produce 16,000 kilograms of copper, huge amounts of silver, gold, palladium, and other precious metals. All of these, recovering all of these, helps us in moving towards a more sustainable economy, apart from the fact that it makes it economically more viable to move towards a sustainable future. Over the past few years, we are delighted to have partnered with the Ministry of Environment on the creation of a resource efficiency strategy. If I can paraphrase, I think the policy draft that the ministry has put out focuses on, obviously, number one, economic growth that is equitable and sustainable. Number two, reduces primary consumption, resource consumption, to ultimately to levels that are sustainable. It looks at creating a higher value through less material, through more resource efficient and circular approaches, and it minimizes waste creation and the loss of embedded resources at the end of the life by ensuring, as well as ensuring security of supply by the recycling of waste and the materials that go into the waste. We look at global best practices and see that many of them are completely available for being used in India, but there are many other areas where we would need to develop policies from scratch. If we look at collection, for example, it is a major challenge for us. We have a low value collection economy based around people who collect scrap. We will need to upgrade it. We will need to make sure that the people who are doing scrap collection, they are the people who know where it is available. They are the people who have access to the markets. We will need to upgrade their skills so that they can look at and possibly even certify tomorrow the level of the quality of the recycled material that is bought. We would like them to be able to collect this and provide the scrap material into the formal streams so that it can be recycled. And therefore, this collection, the monetization of collection, the upgrading of the skills of the scrap dealers becomes something which would become very India specific and may possibly have lessons on how we use it in other developing countries. I believe that resource efficiency is an input whose time has come. It is one of those few things in which there has been an adequate amount of thinking, adequate amount of consultation, adequate amount of looking at the kinds of tools that we can use that has been done. So in a sense, now that this coronavirus pandemic has opened the window for us, we are ready to jump through the window and take advantage of the opportunity. I again welcome Mr. Gupta, Ms. Schumacher, and all the colleagues who are here. And together, I believe we can help India move towards a more resource efficient economy. Thank you very much. And Anil, back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mathur. That was a very appropriate and overarching coverage of the issue as we see it here from India. And now to get a European perspective on the same, I'd like to invite my colleague from Brussels, Ms. Astrid Schumacher, who is the director in the European Commission Directorate General for Environment, to give her opening remarks, the keynote speech by Astrid Schumacher. Over to you, Astrid.
Thank you so much. I hope I've managed to solve my connection problems and you can hear me now. Dear Secretary Gupta, dear Dr. Mathur, it's always a pleasure to speak after you because I can limit my remarks to a few words saying I agree, but I will nonetheless elaborate a bit more. Estimated guests and participants, it's really an honor to be with you on World Environment Day. And I sort of remember just 2 years ago on this day, Prime Minister Modi made groundbreaking commitments to rid India of single-use plastics. And at a moment when world governments around now are scrambling to get more single-use plastics in the shape of personal protective equipment for their healthcare workers, this actually seems a long time ago. And today, in the midst of this global pandemic, with the dramatic economic and social consequences that we can all see and feel, we are obviously focused now on saving lives, on supporting health infrastructure, on food availability, on providing liquidity support to industry, notably small and medium-sized enterprises. But as we come to grips with the health challenge, we find that other challenges are still very much there. Climate change, biodiversity loss, the use of resources and pollution are existential and global emergencies that threaten our economies and well-being in even more profound ways. And therefore, we believe that the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Climate Agreement remain crucial to help better equip the world for future systemic shocks. Now, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, countries around the globe are working towards recovery plans for the time after lockdown. Over the next years, governments will spend several trillion euros, dollars, rupees to recover from the crisis. And what we spend today will have to be paid back over decades to come. So we think in a way that we borrow from the next generation. And therefore, what we borrow, we should invest in the issues important to them, the issues that will shape their way of life, their opportunities, and their well-being. And that means, in the words of the UN Secretary General, we must build back better. The recovery must be green. It must make us more resilient towards future shocks, and it must help us tackle our environment challenges. Now, in Europe, back in December, we put forward the European Green Deal as the European Union's new growth strategy. And today, This European Green Deal for us is both the compass and the engine to a green post-COVID-19 recovery. It is our plan to build more sustainable, smart, resilient, future-proof economies that are inclusive, that put people first and leave no one behind. Our aim is to transform the EU into a fair and prosperous society with a modern, clean, resource-efficient, and therefore competitive economy, where there are no net emissions of greenhouse gases in 2050, where natural capital is protected, restored, and enhanced, and where economic growth is decoupled from resource use. Now, this, I think we can easily agree, is a big ambition. And it is an ambition which we now have to realize on the back of economies that are much weaker. We are in the process of spelling out how we want to do this. A climate law to bring us to carbon neutrality in 2050, a biodiversity strategy to protect, restore, and enhance our natural capital, a farm-to-fork strategy to overhaul our food system, and a chemical strategy later this year, and a zero pollution action plan to be adopted in 2021, and much more. But crucially, to achieve these ambitions, we need to redesign our economy as a whole. And here I'm completely in line with what Dr. Mathur has been elaborating on just now. An essential part of the Green Deal, and thus of the EU's recovery plan, is therefore moving to the circular economy and to greater resource efficiency. And that's what I would like to focus on in the next few minutes. In March, the European Commission, has presented a new circular economy action plan to address 4 major areas. First, sustainable product policy, making sustainable products the norm in the European Union. We will propose legislation to ensure that products placed on the EU market are designed to last longer, are easier to reuse, repair, and recycle, and incorporate as much as possible recycled materials instead of primary raw materials. Second, we want to empower our consumers. We want our consumers to have access to reliable information on issues such as repairability and durability of products, and to help them make environmentally sustainable choices. Third, as we have done with plastics, we want to focus on a number of resource-intense sectors and elaborate strategies for the entire sector. We're looking here into electronics and ICT, at textiles, and at construction. And building on the legislation we already have, fourthly, we want to ensure there's less waste in the European Union. The aim will be to halve municipal waste by 2030, including new targets to reduce packaging waste, and including mandatory requirements for all packaging placed on the EU market to be reusable or recyclable in economically viable ways by 2030. And we also put forward a series of actions to minimize EU exports of waste and to tackle illegal shipment of waste. And finally, to promote the circular economy internationally, we propose a number of initiatives we would like to lead on. The launch of a global circular economy alliance, a global agreement on plastics, working together with all countries to explore the definition of a safe operating space for natural resource use, and kickstarting the discussions on a possible international agreement on sustainable management of resources. All these initiatives acknowledge that the ambition of the Green Deal and the broader green transition will not be achieved by Europe acting alone. Therefore, consultation of international efforts, global solidarity, and multilateralism are crucial if we want to avoid lapsing into fossil fuel and resource-intensive recovery. And we are thus keen to work with others to share our expertise and experience and learn from others and work together with them towards a more sustainable economic development. For resource efficiency specifically, the G20 Resource Efficiency Dialogue offers us a good framework for doing so. And we're looking forward very much to engaging with India as we move towards your presidency of the G20 in 2022. We urge all international partners to put in place robust and green national recovery strategies. This will give our societies a sense of direction and purpose, and it will guide investors and businesses towards more sustainability. And therefore, it's good to see that India has announced a significant post-COVID-19 economic stimulus package and the inclusion of resource efficiency into strategies across various sectors. We believe that the circular economy and resource efficiency policies have the potential to increase the longer time efficiency of India's stimulus package by reducing material use and associated costs while creating new jobs. Under the EU Resource Efficiency Initiative, EU and India have initiated work on bringing resource efficiency and circular economy to the forefront of our relations. And I believe we've been successful. Key sectors using critical raw materials were assessed in terms of opportunities for more efficiency of material use. We have looked together at the automotive sector, at construction, at electronic and plastics, steel, aluminium, and renewables, photovoltaics in particular. And this work formed the basis for developing the draft National Resource Efficiency Policy released by the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change in August 2019, and also the preparation of the first state-level resource efficiency strategy launched by the Chief Minister of Goa in February 2020. And through this analytical work, best practices on resource efficiency and circular economy have been identified. And we hope that India's recovery process and the related investments that are now necessary will enable us to implement what we've learned there and to scale it up. And I'm looking forward to, in just, I think, 1 minute, to hear from Secretary Gupta on the latest developments on the Indian resource efficiency policies and strategies and on the expected way forward in this essential work. So to conclude, we see more than anything, the COVID-19 crisis has been demonstrating the need for the world to come together, to fight the immediate health impact for sure, but also to repair and rebuild our economies. The EU stands ready to work with India to scale up our partnership by exchanging more knowledge, more expertise, by creating more business opportunities. This is the context in which we are working towards the second phase of the Resource Efficiency Initiative to follow up on the ongoing work. And the broader EU-India partnership, this is really my last sentence now, on resource efficiency and circular economy that we have been discussing in recent months is therefore also more important than ever. So let us give it the profile it deserves, make sure we have the backing of our political leaders by formally adopting it at the next India-EU summit. So these were my key messages to you. Thank you for having listened, and thanks to the organizers for the opportunity to intervene in this webinar.
All right, thank you very much to Ms. Astrid Schumacher. Thank you for your presentation. And before we move on to the next keynote speech, I have a few housekeeping announcements. One is that, we would like to take a screenshot of all the speakers. So all the speakers, kindly switch on your cameras, because right now, if you've switched off your camera, all we can see are the initials of your name, which will not make for a good picture. Nobody will know what is AG and SC and RS stand for. So please put on your cameras, switch on your cameras. Colleagues who are in charge of this, please take a screenshot. Swati Ganeshan, you need to switch on your own camera also, please. Right. Okay, this is a good picture. This is a good picture. Thank you very much. Also, all the participants who are listening in, I would invite you to kindly put in your questions after Mr. Gupta's keynote. We have a few minutes for a moderated questions and answers session. It's not every day that you get a chance to ask questions directly to the Secretary and to the Director of the European Commission on technical topics related to resource efficiency, circular economy, and so on. So kindly ask questions to them and to Dr. Mathur, who is also kindly and patiently waiting here with us. And with that, first of all, thank you again to Astrid for laying out this broad overview of the issue from the European side. The last sentence of your speech actually makes for a headline, which is EU stands ready to work with India on the issue of resource efficiency and circular economy. And with that, I invite Mr. R.P. Gupta, Secretary in the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, to kindly lay out his vision on this topic. The keynote speech by Mr. R.P. Gupta. Thank you, sir.
Before Mr. Gupta speaks, can I request all the panelists who are not speaking to switch off their microphones and mute themselves?
Thank you, and welcome to this webinar. Dr. Mathur, Mr. Schumacher, and other participants. We are meeting on the webinar at a time when the corona pandemic is at its peak. Friends, when we evolved as human beings, as Homo sapiens from the nature, and took some steps ahead of the other species, we first learned what is called the agriculture revolution. Our numbers started increasing from that time onwards. Before that, we were just foragers and gatherers like any other species. We depended totally on nature. Whatever nature provided us, we limited ourselves to what nature has given us. But with the agriculture revolution, we started manipulating the nature for our advantage. Consequently, a very vicious circle started playing. Our numbers increased, our needs increased, and the kind of lifestyle that we enjoy today, that also started increasing. Then came Industrial Revolution, which further put us on a path of development which needed more and more resources. We exploited the nature not only for our numbers, but our per capita consumption of the primary resources that also went up. To what extent that was sustainable is all we know. We elbowed out other species. Number of species has disappeared, and quite a few of them are attributable to us. With this and the unabated exploitation of earth and the nature for our own needs, the nature is now crying us. It is really crying. And it is sending us the messages. The climatic events, the extreme climatic events, the storms, the droughts, the shortage of drinking water, these are all manifestations of what we have done to the nature and what in return nature is showing it to us. COVID is, I hope it is the last in that series and we take the lessons from it and get onto the path which is more bearable for the Mother Earth. Friends, COVID-19 outbreak and the consequent public health crisis had brought economic activities almost to a complete halt in a number of countries. As economies struggle to return to normalcy, the situation will be very different. The practice of social distancing has entered in our daily lifestyle as individuals, governments, communities, industrial firms, etc., come to grip with the challenge of minimizing the loss of human life in the face of pandemic. Closed geographical boundaries, sharp fall in availability of commodities and labor will force substantial changes in the way we have been producing and conducting and consuming. COVID-19 emergency and lockdown, despite bringing numerous hardship, has handed us the opportunity for a new start. The crisis will help us to understand the core problems and deeper transformative changes that are required in the social and economic fabric at various levels. Most importantly, it has highlighted the innate dependence of our economic and social systems on well-being of our natural environment, which typically has been largely considered as a commodity to extract resources from, to provide for human needs and aspirations. The pandemic has brought us the unique opportunity to reset our economy on path of green, resilient, and self-reliant economic recovery and growth. India's economy is one of the most dynamic economies in the world. In pre-COVID era, a $2.7 trillion economy, India has been one of the fastest growing major economies. Though India's gross GDP and per capita income has been increasing for many decades, the consumption and supply gap of resources have also been steadily increasing, coupled with environmental challenges. Faces an enormous challenge: how can it fulfill the basic needs of its population without overshooting environmental limits? Friends, with 1/6 of the world population, India is the second most populous country in the world, but has less than 3% of the global land surface and is likely to face significant resource constraint in near future if it continues with the usual business systems. Green economy is a development strategy which harmonizes both economic development and ecological sustainability. However, greening the economy is a long process, and actions aimed at reviving the economy have to be so designed as to yield benefits in the short as well as the medium and long term. Resource efficiency presents a world of opportunity to not just address the resource constraint and environmental concerns, but also drive transformative benefits for business and consumers. It entails gradually decoupling economic activity from the consumption of finite resources and designing waste out of the systems. Resource efficiency as a strategy will provide opportunities to reduce wastage along the product and service value chains, thereby reducing cost and hence prices, thus helping revive demand, all the while simultaneously reducing environmental stress of production and consumption. In the last few months, we have experienced the ways how economic agents have started making responsible and efficient use of resources through working remotely. More opportunities will emerge through meeting needs by investing in local capabilities and resources. A focus on localization for developing institutional capacity, including for communication and information, will emerge. Local enterprises and supply chains would need strengthening. The issue of premium for local production and sharing of this premium with local producers will be quite important. With the adoption of resource efficiency, associated technological innovations, new job requiring reskilling will emerge. In the economic downturn caused by the pandemic, the role of resource efficiency as a critical measure for skill development and job need to be recognized and nurtured. The Government of India accorded top priority to the Sustainable Development Goals and the Agenda 2030. It is committed to achieve economic growth through judiciously prioritizing and adapting the goals and targets according to the local challenges, resources, and capacities. Ensuring sustainable consumption and production pattern through sustainable natural resource management, waste reduction, and promoting resource efficiency has been a priority for the Government of India, and it is reflected in various policies and measures such as National Environmental Policy, nationally determined contributions on climate change, draft resource efficiency policy, National Clean Air Program, Make in India, Zero Defect Scheme, Smart City, Swachh Bharat, Clean India, and Ganga Rejuvenation Mission. To assess resource-related issues faced by India and advise the government on a comprehensive strategy for resource efficiency, India Resource Panel was established in 2015 as an advisory body under the ministry. The panel has been reconstituted as a steering committee to guide the resource efficiency cell set up at the ministry in 2018. The ministry is also partnering with the European Union on resource efficiency under the joint declaration of intent with EU REI initiative and has TERI as our knowledge partner. Government of India has recognized the need for integrating resource efficiency with economic development of the country. In this regard, Ministry has formulated a draft national policy for resource efficiency that aims to provide an overarching policy framework to enable efficient use of resources and upcycling of waste across all sectors of the economy. The draft National Resource Efficiency Policy 2019 draws upon life cycle thinking and seeks to create a facilitative and regulatory environment to mainstream resource efficiency across all sectors by fostering cross-sectoral collaborations, development of policy instruments, action plan, and efficient implementation and monitoring. The resource efficiency policy is guided by the principles of reduction in primary resources consumption to sustainable levels, in keeping with achieving the sustainable development goals and staying within the planetary boundaries. Creation of higher value with less material through resource efficient and circular approaches. Waste minimization, upcycling of waste, material security, and creation of employment opportunities and business models beneficial to the cause of environment protection and restoration. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has announced a special economic package for Atmanirbhar Bharat or self-reliant India. The package is to the tune of almost rupees 20 lakh crore, which is about 10% of India's GDP. The package has 5 pillars: economy, infrastructure, systems, vibrant demography, and demand. It has not only the potential to create jobs and support economic activities in the short run, but also pave the path towards economic recovery that is driven by domestic innovations using local resources and strengthening sustainable consumption and production. As Prime Minister during the World Government Summit 2018 Dubai executively summarized, we need to follow the 6R that stand for reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, redesign, and remanufacture. This will lead to rejoice. That is what meant by Paul Anand. The resource efficiency and recycling is actually, as a student of science, I understand, is nothing but using the energy for getting the primary products back. We use energy on the primary resources to get the final product. We again have to use the energy to get back the primary resources for recycling. The challenge, in my view, is to minimize the energy requirement for recycling the waste. And if we can come to a situation where the energy requirement for getting the final product from the primary resources is less than the energy required from primary resources to final product. If recycling energy is less than that, we probably have achieved our goal. Coupled with it, we see that the energy which we have to use should not be dependent on the primary resources. Fortunately, the renewables are coming to our help, and I have absolutely no doubt that in the coming years, with our policies and the opportunities this renewable energy presents to us, the resource efficiency and waste recycle will be a very, very doable, practical, and economic viable thing. Hence, it is time is ripe to adopt integrated thinking and exploiting interlinkages across sectors and resources that can make India utilize them more efficiently and unlock the associated benefits and eventually make the recovery green and efficient. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, sir, for a very comprehensive overview of the subject. My colleague Henriette has been receiving questions which have come in through the chat box. There are also a lot of people watching this discussion live on Facebook, and we've been receiving questions also through Facebook. So I will hand over the mic to Henriette to pose some of those questions which have come from the audience. And the three key panel speakers are requested to answer them as appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Anil. Good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, happy World Environment Day. This is my 6th World Environment Day in India. And I'm really happy that we can have this big gathering today, because it's unfortunately also my last World Environment Day in India. So I take this as my personal farewell party. So thank you very much for being here. We've received a number of questions through the chat and through Facebook, and I would like to start by posing one to Astrid. It relates to India is the upcoming presidency of G20 in 2021, and we know that there has been attempts or a work stream on resource efficiency has been established within the G20. Do you have any views on what could be a potential role for India in this context? And of course, I will also ask Mr. Gupta the same afterwards, so you can prepare yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Henriette, and it's great to be at your party. So really good to be here. In fact, you're a bit ahead of your time. India's presidency of the G20 only comes in 2022. I think Secretary Gupta can take a deep breath and has time to prepare for that. But I mentioned it because this resource efficiency dialogue in the G20 is a very new dialogue. It was launched by Japan when Japan started having an environmental work stream in the G20, which I think was overdue. So now we have it. And now, of course, we have this dialogue and we must fill it with life. And we can fill it with life only by making it concrete. It's not so interesting that we sit in these meeting rooms or virtually and exchange the theory of resource efficiency with which we're all familiar. I think we need to come to a discussion that is much more practically oriented and that informs all participants of the concrete advantages that they can gain from greater resource efficiency. And here, I think India is just in an excellent position to lead. As Secretary Gupta was just pointing out, we have an extremely dynamic economy, an extremely rapid process of modernization, of urbanization. And in all these processes, if they're not done in a resource efficient manner, they cannot be done within planetary boundaries as they have to. So resource efficiency for India is, I think, a matter of survival, and it's actually a matter for the world as a whole to meet the global sustainable development goals. What India does and how India does it will be crucial for that. So, and at the same time, this is recognized in India. You have a fabulous scientific resource-oriented dialogue. You have your own resource panel. That's, I think, almost unique in the world. You have TERI that brings all its knowledge. You have Niti Aayog committed to resource efficiency. So all that comes together. You have a comprehensive policy that Mr. Gupta has just been outlining. You're not just looking at one end of the cycle at racism, but you look at the whole economic cycle. So nobody's better placed than you. And this means we're having great expectations that India will be leading this dialogue and will show the way for the G20. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Astrid. Mr. Gupta, would you care to give your view on this topic?
Sure, and I think Astrid has given quite a comprehensive reply, and I think I would need to add very little to it. But I think the resource efficiency and the waste recycling, that is something whose time has come. And whether it is India or whether it is any other country, if we have to heed to the call of the nature, there is no other way than going for the resource efficiency. The challenge and the policy environment has to be that the resource efficiency and the waste recycling is made cost effective. We put a definite price for use of the primary resources and increase the pace of resource efficiency and recycling. It has to be like that. And probably the nature is also showing us, as I said in my address, the renewable energy which is coming to our help, that has to be considered, and we will have to harness it more and more to expedite the process of resource efficiency and waste. So if it is whether India is a G20 chairman or any other country, it does not matter. It has to be on the agenda of G20, whoever it be.
Thank you very much. I have a question for you, Dr. Mathur. The question is, to what do we attribute the relative silence on resource efficiency in the Indian recovery package, despite a fair bit of groundwork, particularly for economic benefits, that's been done since 2017? So basically, why do we not see more resource efficiency in the recovery packages? You're muted.
It is there and it is not there. So, you know, there are two parts to the package. One is the recovery part, the relief part, which is a lot more well-defined. And that, of course, we see in terms of cash transfers, in terms of the specificity. The second is largely around development, around growth. Now, if you see there is, for example, a huge credit package for the MSME sector. There are guarantee mechanisms for this because they're saying there will be no collateral. If the finance institutions are providing resources to SMEs, they need confidence that they will be repaid. How do you get this confidence? You get it by ensuring that the productivity and profitability of those enterprises is far better than those of yesterday. Resource efficiency is a fundamental part of this. So by bringing the SMEs into the financial sector, we are providing the kind of umbrella, the resource efficiency umbrella, under which greater productivity, greater profitability, and hence the greater chance of repayment come together. So it comes in as a financial necessity rather than something being pushed down the throat of industries. If you want to survive, you better be resource efficient.
Thank you very much. I have one more question here, which I think I should post because it's from my dear friend, the Plugman of India, who has tried to make India waste-free. He's not quite succeeded yet, but he has a good question here. So he asks, can EPR and circular economy combined and due diligently followed make a nearly zero waste system? What are the primary stakeholders that we need to mobilize and incentivize to make it a reality on the ground?
Okay, this is a big.
Who will reply? You. Yes.
Let me start this off. You know, this is a very big question because there are various kinds of waste streams. You know, even if you're looking at the municipal sector, you've got waste streams which are municipal sewage waste. There are waste streams which are industrial waste. There are waste streams which are, in a sense, the waste from, let's say, the streets. How you deal with each one of them is different. The kinds of stakeholders we will need are different. But as I was mentioning earlier, the first point is collection. Separation and collection are at the heart of running a waste recycling system. I can put up a plant for recycling, but if I don't get stuff, what do I do with it? So, in my view, creating the economics to make the collection system viable is at the heart of it. So, who are the stakeholders? The stakeholders are, one, the conversion industry, potential conversion industry itself, the people who can be waste collectors. This could be the municipal corporation, this could be the scrap collectors, these could be, for example, a new set of entrepreneurs who make money. You know, for example, I was very surprised to learn that there's only one company in India which collects biomass, which can be put into biomass plants. These are the kinds of the stakeholders that we want. So to cut a long story short, I think this is a discussion around the kinds of confidence that people need to come into the collection and aggregation sectors for waste.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gupta, would you like to add something to this?
Sure. I think the stakeholders would depend on different sectors. In some of the sectors, of course, the regulatory environment and the regulatory authorities, particularly the government from the policy perspective, probably will be one of the major stakeholders. Apart from that, there are different players in the different value chain of the recycling and the resource efficiency. As Dr. Mathur has said, in municipal waste, there are direct collectors, there are the processors, there are municipal bodies. So these stakeholders, we have to design an economic system whereby it becomes a win-win situation for everybody. The municipality or the local bodies, they are responsible for disposing of the waste. Now, they have to play a major role, probably cost-wise also. They have to pay a price for environmentally disposing the waste, and that disposing the waste should be costlier than recycling the waste. Now, that is where the all kind of all the players, they will see a economic value for themselves. So enforcement of the regulatory policies, the designing of the regulatory policies is definitely going to play a role into it. But at the same time, the reskilling, the entrepreneurs' skills, and the capital which is needed, that would also be very important factor.
Thank you very much. Astrid, would you like to add something to this question from the European perspective?
Not so easy, because I think it was comprehensively answered. I think what we would highlight from our experience was what both speakers have been saying, that it's not a matter of a stakeholder, it's a matter of all stakeholders coming together. So develop policies that responsibilize all stakeholders, those that produce the waste in the first place, the consumers, the industry, etc., etc. The question was posed specifically also talking about extended producer responsibility, and I think that is an extremely important policy, because it speaks directly to those that produce, that put products on the market, and that are responsible for the product design. And it is, as we know, at the product design stage that it is determined what is the waste that we will see at the end of the product life cycle. And by linking through extended producer responsibility, a fee or whatever, making it more attractive for companies to think about the waste phase and to integrate this in their thinking and design in a waste-friendly way, making it easier to recycle, easier to dismantle, is just incredibly important. And then also, I think, as I was trying to explain, we would like to enable consumers to make their own choices. So we need to find a way that consumers, when they're confronted with similar products, to see which is the one that is actually the most environmentally friendly.
Thank you very much. We are unfortunately quickly coming to an end of the questions and answers. There are a lot of interesting questions on all social media platforms. So we will definitely collect them and try to reflect on them later on. But there's just one more question that I would like to ask, in particular to Dr. Mathur and to Mr. Gupta. The question is, given the large informal market in India, how can we try to mainstream the concept of resource efficiency? So maybe you would like to start.
Can I ask you to repeat the question? Given the large informal?
Astrid, could you maybe turn off your microphone because there's an echo? Given the large informal market in India, how can we try to mainstream the concept of resource efficiency? So basically looking at the informal sector.
Sure. So if you ask me, there is a huge amount of recycling that occurs in India already because of the informal market. The problem is It is done in situations which are extremely poor as far as the health of the workers is concerned, health of the scrap collectors is concerned. It also leads to not value addition, but it leads to value diminution. So if paper is collected, it doesn't go to the next higher quality of paper, it goes to the next lower quality of paper. If we want to address these two things, the key issue is the upgradation of the skills of the scrap collectors. This means their ability to be able to distinguish between what kind of a scrap could be used for a higher quality of paper, for example, and that which cannot. It also means that they should be able to segregate it and pass those streams on to the right converters. I believe it is these programs, which are job-linked programs, that would help us enhance the level of services provided by the informal sector, and in the process make those livelihoods more sustainable.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gupta, would you like to add a final word on this particular issue?
Well, I think Dr. Mathur has answered it very simply, and I don't think I need.
He always does, yeah? Okay, so I think with this we have come more or less to the end of the inaugural session. We forgot to start with the lighting of the lamp. That was of course a mistake. We will have to see how we can work on having virtual lamps that we can light. But I think we can still have the end of the ceremony. So if everybody could please turn their cameras on again, so we can have the ceremonial photo in front of the stage. Then we will ask the photographers to climb onto a chair, so that we can all be in the picture. So everybody, please turn on your cameras. It looks very sad right now with the initials. Yes, one more.
I would request Ria, Raka, Akanksha, everyone to switch on their cameras, please. Everybody, thank you so much. Everybody is looking very, very pretty, very beautiful. This is brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we have the ceremonial photo now. So thank you very much to everybody. And I give the word back to Anil. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Henriette. We now move on to the next section of the program, which is a technical session on the state of play of resource efficiency in India. We've got 5 speakers lined up who will all give their perspective and experiences from various initiatives, projects that they are handling. We are running behind time by at least 20 minutes. So if it's okay, I would request the next few speakers to kindly make it shorter than the time that we had earlier, allotted them. The original deal was that everybody will speak for 8 minutes, and we would do this within 40 minutes. But that was when we were going to start this session at 3:40 p.m. Now it is already 4:05. We have this webinar room technically available till, I don't know, 5 or 5:30. So if we keep on going, the system will kick us out at some point. So it's better we reduce our presentations, because after this technical presentation, we have one more very important session, which is related to the Lead the Green Change campaign, for which Henriette will be coming back in. And this year we've got some more new signatories of the EU Green Pledge who will be coming on screen and who will be signing the EU Green Pledge. And that's a very important part of the program as well. We don't want to miss that just because we ran out of time. So the only way to accommodate everybody is if I can request kindly the next 5 speakers to make it shorter than 8 minutes. So without further ado, let me first of all invite Dr. Rachna Arora, Deputy Team Leader and Coordinator of the EU Resource Efficiency Initiative in India from GIZ. She's going to speak on resource efficiency strategy and policy for greening of recovery, some perspectives. Over to you, Rachna.
Thanks, Anil. Can you all hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you. Please carry on.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I think this is the World Environment Day, which is one of the most sustainable one, at least since I have started to celebrate it, because I think we have a huge audience here, and we also have a full panel, as you've just heard, many of them, of course, international, and we have few more coming as international speakers. And why I call it the most sustainable is, of course, for several reasons. And I think one of it is that we have connected to an entire outreach of all the people who are there listening to us. And we haven't spent so much of carbon, which we would have if we would have traveled out of Delhi, or if we would have invited these experts to India. So I think, yeah, I think that's what we have also heard from our panel. Maybe that's the new normal now, to actually try more of this. And maybe just one of the virus has actually taught us ways of how we can actually do within our planetary boundaries. And I think that's what I take it as an opportunity from the entire COVID 2.5, 3 months that we have been locked in our houses. Yeah, so I think that's what is just to begin with. What I'm going to talk about, and I think we have also asked to cut down some of our inputs, but I think Mr. Gupta has already laid a lot of essential elements of why resource efficiency is important and what all. So I'll just take 1 or 2 minutes to actually talk about if you could just move to the next slide, please. Yeah, so I would just talk about what the project is all about. So this is the European Union Resource Efficiency Initiative, which largely supports the implementation of the SDG 12, which is responsible consumption and production. And of course, I think working on this project since 2017 till now, till 3.5 years, we just thought that this is a good opportunity to actually share our impacts right away, because these 3 years have been a remarkable journey working with our partners, our consortium partners, where GIZ is a lead. Terry is our Indian partner as well, with CII as an industry partner for outreach, and Adelphi, which is our German partner. I think we have been able to make this remarkable transition on the resource efficiency path, and major through the EU financing with this partnership instrument. I think this is where we see a lot of opportunities and collaboration, and of course, sustaining the efforts that we bring forward. So looking at 4 of the sectors where we worked, and majorly looking at assessment, sectoral action plans, developmental policies across these different sectors, and partnerships and networking has been one of the key instruments for our project, and also building up awareness, raising best practices, work around standards which foster resource efficiency. So that's been largely, maybe you need to go back on the slide, yeah. So looking at our main impacts, Mr. Gupta already pointed out, we worked with the Ministry of Environment, supported them through Terry as our knowledge partner to actually have a national resource efficiency policy. We also worked with Niti Aayog as a facilitating agency to actually get the institutional development with 9 ministries, departments, action plans till 2020. We also worked with 4 sectoral ministries which were key, like Ministry of Mines, Ministry of Steel, Ministry of Housing, and Electronics and IT. And I think these sectoral strategies are the action plans which is on board. And this has all been done pre the COVID era. And I think now we need to just relook on them of what have been these strategies. And I think largely since the project and since the work was on SCP, a lot of recommendations have been on the policy shifts on circular economy, and have also looked at local production, local sourcing, minimal primary extraction options. And this is what I also heard the panel talk about and reiterated across. Some of the sectors where we worked was renewables, mobility, EPR on waste and plastics and electronic waste, and also building and construction. Yeah, next please. Looking at these partnerships, as I mentioned, for EU and Indian partner members, our major area has been policy dialogues, local action with the community, with the informal sector workers on plastics and several other areas, and also supported business partnerships across through Circular Economy Mission, which we hosted in 2018, where of course we had a big business delegation and policy dialogues with the business India and EU across. What we also did was at the state level to have Goa as one of the first states to actually release a resource efficiency circular economy strategy. This was just few weeks before the COVID impact. And I think now we are just trying to relook on the recommendations. As I mentioned, again, a lot of things on community mobilization, local sourcing and local production, which actually looks at how do you actually foster resource efficiency and circular loops in this furthering the resource efficiency dialogue. Next, please. Some of the key elements on recovering strategies, of course, I think it was already mentioned, but I think what is also essential to look at that we have seen over the last 3 months, a very, very different way of how we as consumers have started to live in a very, I would say, sustainable lifestyle, which is not sustainable in the sense that it would change as we start stepping out, most probably. So I think we just need to ensure that the progress that has happened, especially in countries like India, just is retained, and this recovery plan, which is being fostered or put forward, should actually just look at integrating these elements clearly and not just trying to reverse. For instance, with the single-use plastics, you're just actually looking at how do you flatten that curve, which is with the waste management definitely going to increase largely. So how does the stimulus ensure that resource efficiency resource efficiency instruments are actually integrated as a part of the package? Also, as I mentioned, sustainable lifestyles, environmental impacts, and public health related interconnectedness, because this is what something has been taught to us over last 3 months, that public health, environmental stressors like air pollution and all are also interconnected. And I think this is where the package needs to look at the long-term vision of the government. Then I think something which is key to promote circularity is repairability and reusability. I'm not even coming to the last R, which is recycling, but creating green jobs around repair and reuse as a market. I think this is what we need to think about as innovation and take it forward in a country like India. Some of the key elements, I think some was already covered by Dr. Mathur as well. Supply chain risk, I think this is key of how do we look at the renewables and the supply and mitigate the risk which is there, and how do we create this resilience by, of course, having a cross-sectoral collaboration, looking at sustainable infrastructure, not just green, but how do you make these green infrastructure, renewables and others much more sustainable than the way they were currently. And also looking at the linkages of public health, environmental issues, as mentioned. Next, please, Dipakshi. And I think, yeah, what we now intend to do, as I mentioned, a lot of work that we have done, and we will continue to work with the Ministry of Environment in supporting the RE policy once it gets notified. We also look at, with response to the COVID-19, to actually look at a detailed assessment on industrial production, sustainable lifestyles, with the concept of sufficiency in India, because I think as consumers, we have just dwelt that way. And I think maybe this can be continued further with a little bit of nudge that can be floated around. And I think this is what we need to consider, and especially on the one of the questions Henrietta posted on the impact on the informal economy and waste recycling, which is there. So this is what we intend to do with the Ministry of Environment soon, to begin with this assessment. At the state level, Goa, we would just look at indicators and kind of support, especially looking at the greening of the tourism, because now tourism was one of the main sectors which we looked at in the strategy, and now this is severely impacted by the COVID crisis. So how do we look at retaining that entire sector, and also looking at the greening of the tourism, which was earlier existing with its form and way, and support some local communities who are actually looking at the circular supply chains, especially with waste and plastics and recycling scenario in Goa. Yeah, I think this is what I have largely to talk about what the project is doing. And if you're interested, please visit our website. We have loads of information there on these sectoral reports and the work which we have done with the ministry and with NITI Aayog. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Rachna Arora. We now move on to the next presentation. This one is by Mr. Shravik Bhattacharya, Associate Director at TERI, Center for Resource Efficiency and Governance. He will be making a presentation on sectoral analysis of resource efficiency strategies, key takeaways for greening of recovery. Mr. Shravik Bhattacharya, over to you.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So by the time Dipakshi starts sharing the presentation, so The introduction to the European Union Resource Efficiency Initiative project has already been presented quite in detail by Rachna. So one of the things that was undertaken as a part of this entire initiative was undertaking a deep dive analysis to understand what are the current use of resources across selected sectors and what could be the potential in terms of efficiencies that exist in these sectors. And we did it not only like these certain sectors were taken up by Terry, but it was also taken up by some of the ministries, the line ministries, and obviously our partners. So let me not waste time, and I go directly to the sectoral analysis. Dipakshi, if you can just move to the next slide. So essentially, a detailed assessment of resources efficiency, as I mentioned, was undertaken in some of the hotspot sectors, and you can see those hotspot sectors primarily include electric vehicles, steel, aluminium, the solar PV, the electronic waste, the plastics, and the construction and the demolition. Primarily because if you look at their contribution to the Indian GDP, they are quite significant and to the tune of like 25 to 27%. Wherein automobile has a contribution of almost 77%, followed by chemicals 2%, the construction and demolition 9%, waste, particularly electronic waste processing 1.8%, steel 2%, aluminium and solar PV 0.8% and 2.1%. Now, if I go to the next slide, yes, on the sectoral assessment. So what I'm going to do is briefly touch upon what are the main issues associated with the resource consumption in these sectors and what we need to do to ensure that we can address some of the opportunities that exist so far efficiencies in these sectors are concerned. As we all know that automotive sector can be broadly divided into two, primarily of the conventional IC-based vehicle automotive sector, but also of late we have seen a lot of electric vehicles coming up. So we have considered both these two sectors. Primarily, electric vehicle sector, we have considered only four-wheelers. If you look at the overall demand for these materials, we have estimated that the demand for materials primarily comprising of steel, copper, aluminium, and lead and nickel. So it comes to around like 50 to 60 million tons almost 3-4 years ago. However, under a business as usual scenario, we consider the total demand might be around 70 to 80 million tons in the next 10 years. So it calls for, because many of these materials which are being used in these two sectors are not only coming from India, but they are also import dependent, either directly or indirectly in the form of process materials. So if we have to really ensure efficiency in this sector, we need greater and efficient recovery of the secondary materials, which the Ministry of Road Transport is always talking about, already talking about the ELB policy, promotion of cluster-based recycling. So it essentially reduces the distance of recycled material from the place where they are recycled to the place where they are actually entering into the value chain. Improving design to ensure that sustainable materials go into the value chain, training and capacity building, which we have already discussed and Dr. Martha mentioned. And finally, see that how the extended producer responsibility, which is like currently in the e-waste as well as in the plastic sector, can also go into the automotive sector. In the electric vehicle segments, I'm not going into the details, but primarily it essentially take care of like 4 major areas, including the batteries, because a lot of these materials which are used in batteries are imported and energy intensive. There is scope for recycling them, efficient designing, promoting lightweighting and use of sustainable materials, powertrain integration. It can use a lot of those connecting materials, particularly the wiring, so that we can reduce the overall requirement of those materials, but also make it lightweighted and native designed. And promoting 6Rs, well, this is applicable not only in the electric vehicle segments, but also in the conventional vehicle. If we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So in the construction and demolition sector, what we looked at was the construction sector, as you know, has a huge contribution, and more so in the future, because we quite often hear that 70% of the construction is yet to take up, because there are huge amount of potential for urbanization. So this sector is also responsible for almost 12% of the fresh water. The consumption of the sand, which is estimated around 510 million tons per annum, as well as the mortar and the subsequent problem of the generation of the construction and demolition waste. So what is essentially, and particularly at this time, when we are talking about like local supply chains, locally sourced resources, and vernacular and local architecture can play an instrumental role, in particularly in certain segments which we have looked at in the case of Goa in the tourism sector, how we can promote more recycling of the waste which is being generated through the construction and demolition activities, and these products entering into again the construction phase. Either it can be through mixing with the cement, or even through landfilling and the places where constructions are not going to take place. So these need a lot of like norms and standards so that they can be used in a manner that has greater reliability, as well as meets a certain market necessary standards. And greater use of indicator framework and vetting systems. So this is already to some extent in place, for example, in the RIHA Council. But I think there is a need of like certification of more products, and that featuring into the list of greener materials that can be used. So if we can go to the next sector, the plastic and the e-waste sector, yes. So what we see, and that needs no introduction in terms of the volume of plastics which are generated. In fact, almost 10 to 15% of the total waste which is being generated, particularly in major urban centers, comprise of like plastics. Where are they used? And most of them are being single-use plastics. There are no as such markets. Essentially, they end up in the landfills. So total consumptions, if you see, that has been around 14.5 million tons, and almost like 3.5 to 4 million tons of plastic actually end up reaching the landfill sites. Also, the remaining are recycled. So although the numbers vary, but the fact is that the share is significant. So if you have to really, in terms of the electronic waste, if you look at it, the consumption has been steadily increasing, and the kind of like a different type of materials which are being currently recycled in a very informal and crude manner really leads to wastage of those recycled materials, and they end up being used in materials which have very poor quality, particularly in the hardware and hardware sectors. So I think that's a way how we can actually create opportunities for upcycling rather than downcycling. And here are kind of a four-pronged strategy that can strengthen APR in plastic and waste, for which the current policies exist. So we are talking about strengthening the capacities of implementing agencies, exploring strength and weakness of the different implementation mechanisms. So what are the issues? Is it the scale, the volume, or the deployment of the agencies who can actually collect it? How can actually we have a better synergies between the collectors, the processors, as well as the financials? The second is the promotion of large-scale formalization of informal economy, which Dr. Mathur mentioned quite vividly in terms of the need to see that how we are able to add value, and automatically adding value to the processed goods will help the people who are processing earn better. The third one would be supporting the implementation of the extended producer responsibility by developing certain standards, as it will create a lot of confidence among consumers to make those, to use those products based on the various certifications that are currently existing or may need to be developed in the future. And finally, about the incentive structures, there are already incentives in place, but it is all about how we tap them, use them, and based on what kind of innovative technologies that are existing to help better recover the materials, not in a alloy form, but in a more differentiated metal form, which then has a competition in terms of the purity. So for virgin metals are concerned. We can just go to the next slide, please. In finally, the aluminum and the steel recycling, this is primarily a kind of activity which has been done by the Ministry of Steel and the Ministry of Mines, and there is a lot of initiatives which are happening in this space, particularly the Jawaharlal Nehru National Aluminum Research Development Center in Nagpur. So we have seen that the total volume of like scrap, forget about scrap from other sectors, the automotive sector itself has the potential to generate almost 15 to 20 million tons. And this is 3 times more than what scrap we are importing. We are importing around 6 to 7 million tons of steel scrap for meeting our EAF furnaces. So we do have a pool. Only thing is that we are waiting for the the vehicle scrappage policy to come. But let us not wait for that one and have the systems in place so that by the time the vehicle recycling policy comes in, we are able to essentially recycle them and make use of the 6R principles to significantly reduce our dependence on primary resources. So it was understood that if we are able to recycle them, we are able to save almost 21 million tons of ore, 8.25 million tons of coking coal, 3.75 million tons of limestone, and 4.5 million tons of slag generation. So just think of it from the perspective that this only one sector has the potential to provide such kind of savings in the economy. So by 2025, if we see that from the aluminum sector, so more than 1 million tons, 1.5 million tons of aluminum scrap from the automotive sector is possible. So again, thinking from the 6R perspective, we can save a substantial amount of crude oil, water, most importantly, the CO2 emissions, and finally, the amount of solid waste that we generate through particularly the red mud process. So what we propose for the resource efficiency opportunities in the aluminum and steel sector is presented in the subsequent slide. So if we can move, yes. So as I mentioned that this particular analysis for the steel and the aluminum was done by the Ministry of Mines and the JNRDC under the Resource Efficiency Initiative. But in terms of the implementation strategies that we look at, there are a lot of overlaps. And that's why we thought that we can present it under a kind of a single strategy that includes the concept of promoting the zero waste for the industry, which is quite predominant in the in some of the high-end sector within India as well as in Europe. Adoption of energy efficiency. Well, we can achieve energy efficiency to a certain extent, but obviously recycle has a significant impact on the overall energy savings. Primarily, if you look at aluminum, it has the opportunity to save almost 90% of the total energy consumed through the primary process. Focus on recovery of energy, heat and gas, which can also be a way how we can see energy efficiency, quality control and product standardization. So that's an area where we are still lacking because of the lack of adequate certificates and certification process. Many of these secondary steel are consumed in sectors where there are as such no standard requirements or low-end. We have to really gradually move them to something which is higher and can be acceptable and can compete with the conventional and the virgin products. So I think those standardization right from the procurement to the processing as well as the finished product which are coming from the recycling process is very critical. Scrap collection, well, it is a very important thing so far using the cost of reverse logistics is concerned. So we are proposing that there should be certain zonal scrap collection sectors which will help in proper segregation as per the standards that we come in, and treatment facilities that will eventually reduce the load at the processing site, so they do not have enough space, the technology, and the capacity to do these activities. So if it is done at a more decentralized level, so processed, semi-processed materials, waste materials can end up in their value chain. And finally, the recycling element, wherein we are talking about enhancing the overall recycling rate, either in the form of targets or in the form of voluntary requirements. So thank you so much for your attention, and we look forward for a healthy discussion. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Shovik. We now move on to the next speaker for the day from the Netherlands, Amsterdam, Natalia Papu-Caron. She is a researcher and analyst with Circle Economy. And Natalia has been waiting patiently in the room. So it's your turn now, Natalia. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Anil, and thank you all for the invitation to participate in this webinar. I've learned so much already. So in the spirit to keep it short, I would just like to introduce circular economy, what we do, and just a short example of the work we've been tackling through the past year. And yeah, maybe some questions to ask ourselves. So what do we have to look at next? So first of all, circular economy, we are not-for-profit social enterprise. We're based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And if we can go back a minute to the slide before. Yeah, thank you. And our vision is to contribute to a prosperous world of finite resources by accelerating the transition to a circular economy. And we do that by supporting the delivery of practical and scalable circular economy solutions. And we work both with businesses and with governments. We work with innovators, but also with small companies, middle-sized companies, large multinationals, and across the entire value chain. So we work across different sectors. We have specialized programs in, for example, the textiles industry, the finance sector, the built environment. And we also work with cities, with national governments, and with regional governments in order to accelerate this transition. So just to show you an example of the work we've been recently looking into, if we can go to the next slide. Basically, during last year, during 2019, we conducted a scoping study that was commissioned by the Netherlands Environmental Assessment Agency. They basically asked us to look at the current wealth of knowledge of the global environmental and socio-economic effects of pursuing a circular economy in the Netherlands and the EU. But basically, they asked us if the EU goes fully circular with all the policies that we've heard from before implemented, what would be the environmental and socioeconomic effects of this in other countries, other regions, other contexts of the world. And this study provides basically a deep dive into material and product flows of two products. So one is a pair of denim jeans and the other one is a mobile phone. And they both have in common that they have very globalized value chains, both upstream and downstream. And they also have significant potential for circular economy initiatives. So basically what we did, we mapped from resource extraction to the end of life. We visualized, we highlighted the most important countries involved in this value chains and described the potential impact of implementing both EU or Dutch circular economy policies. So here is the example of a pair of denim jeans, which obviously India plays a very important role in the cotton value chain. So I just wanted to share in the next slide, just to pinpoint, because you can read the full study, it's linked in the presentation, but I would like to pinpoint some of the emerging opportunities and challenges that we see emerging from this research for India, and many of them were already mentioned, so we're very much in line by the keynote speakers. One of the emerging opportunities is the opportunity for segregated, in this case, textile waste collection, because the value chain analyzed was of denim jeans. So this opportunity to really collect the waste stream separately and then be able to reuse it, repurpose it, or recycle it at its end of use. Just from an EU perspective, in the EU, all member states by 2025 will be required already to collect this textile waste separately. But of course, this is an opportunity for all countries to also increase the localized handling of waste streams as secondary materials. Another of the opportunities we see is there's a significant potential for new, or as we said, as we heard before, or newly formalized jobs in the waste management or pre-processing for recycling sectors. And this is also based on the European Green Deal being based on a just transition principles, and that points into this job-intensive circular activities. And the last opportunity was in relation to a potential increase in resource efficiency measures within the value chain. And this referred to, in this example of denim jeans, to water savings from innovative finishing techniques, or reduced water use in dyeing and finishing, and also reduced waste, textile waste from the cutting stage and the manufacturing stage. But of course, with all opportunities, there are always emerging challenges, and I think this discussion spurred a lot of interest in future action to really take over these opportunities. So the major challenges that we've seen through this research is that that an increased reuse and extension of lifetime of products and increased recycling may also lead to a reduced demand for virgin raw materials. So the transitions and the shifts in reduced demand for extraction and processing of virgin raw materials also needs to be assessed, as well as the livelihoods, the changes in the livelihoods of the people involved in that stage of the value chain. Also, as we talked before, this is a challenge, but a significant opportunity in enhancing the reskilling, the training programs, the capacity building for workers in this new waste management sector jobs, or pre-processing jobs, or recycling jobs, or the potential of reskilling in order to introduce informal sector workers into formalized sectors. Another challenge is obviously this trade-off between globalized and localized production and consumption, how the changes and shifts in consumption behavior, but also in production. This really needs an in-depth analysis of trade-offs and consequences that is still not there for every sector, for every value chain. So we really encourage this to happen more. And the last challenge that emerged was a lack of transparency in used textile trade flows. Basically also trying to understand for textiles, for example, what kind of used textiles are suitable for reuse, which are suitable for recycling, what type of composition or fiber composition, what type of textile composition do this clothing traded have. And basically connected to this, looking into the potential that design has as an agent of change, because as it was discussed before, the product design also decides what type of used textile, what type of waste you receive at the end of your first consumption cycle. And that would also determine the repairability, the reusability, and the recycling potential that those products have. So if we could just shift to the last slide. Basically, as this was an 8-minute, now a bit shorter contribution, I just wanted to leave you with a lot of links to the work we are doing across sectors, across industries, and across with different stakeholders. So I just wanted to point out some of the key questions that we're working on moving forward, and that we think are relevant for all stakeholders involved to discuss. And one is the power of countries. So how can countries become critical change agents in enabling circularity and helping build a resilient post-crisis or post-COVID-19 system? And each year we measure the circularity of the world, of our globe. So how many resources are reused or recycled, reintroduced into the system. And currently we're 8.6% circular. And that is a very low number at a global scale. So basically, each year we reassess this and we publish a report, which is linked there, where you can read more about how countries can become critical change agents and how they can work actively, as of course everyone is already doing and taking over. Also the role of cities. So how can cities really turn these ambitions into action? And here I just linked the example of the circular strategy that the city of Amsterdam here from the Netherlands has just rolled out for 2025. And this was based in an Amsterdam city donut, which is basically how can we live both between planetary boundaries, but also ensuring well-being for all. And the last thing I wanted to point out to was how do we ensure that people are central to the circular economy, ensuring both well-being for all, but living within planetary boundaries. And simultaneously, how can we support labor market resilience? And we have recently launched a circular jobs initiative, which is basically looking into the potential of circular jobs and assessing the quality of that work, the employment opportunities and challenges. And we will be working through the coming year also in a specific project of assessing the circular jobs in repair, reuse and recycling value chains of used textiles here in the Netherlands. So yeah, in a few months we will have more updates on that. But I just wanted to leave some thoughts in your minds and some links, so you could take a look later on. But thank you very much, and yeah, over to you, Anil.
All right, so thank you, Natalia. That was a very good presentation. You covered all the points that you wanted to cover, and we now move on to the presentation, which is coming up from a company called EcoWare. Ms. Ria Singhal, founder and CEO of EcoWare Sustainable Packaging, will make a presentation. Can you switch on your camera and start speaking?
Hi, can you hear me, Anna? Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All yours.
Thank you. Good evening and good afternoon, everyone, depending on the time zone that you're in. Sorry, can we go to the next slide? This was supposed to be hidden. Thank you. So, and the next one. So we, EcoWare was formed about 11 years ago on the basis of the fact that we wanted to create a product that was safe to eat out of and that was easy to dispose of. We found that a lot of people were eating out of plastic, single-use plastic tableware, not understanding the negative health impact it has, and then also you know, littering, because everything that we used would end up in a landfill since we don't have any formal waste segregation in India. And obviously, we know that plastic pollution has become one of our planet's greatest environmental threats. You know, alarmingly, plastics are now entering our food system. There is more and more clinical evidence to show that when you put hot food in a plastic plate, the plastic melts and leaches toxins, which you eventually ingest and then obviously causes all sorts of disease. So the idea behind EcoWare was that India being a biomass-rich nation, we set off to use agri-waste. So typically crops such as wheat, rice, and sugarcane, once the crop is processed, what is left over is cleaned and used as our raw material. So we convert this crop waste we put it through a thermoforming process, and we created a brand new experience for the food and beverage industry. Our products are 100% natural, and the beauty is that they're backyard biodegradable within a 90 to 100-day period. So what that means is if you put any of the EcoWare products in soil in your backyard, once it comes in contact with soil, it will start breaking down, and you don't have to rely on any formal waste segregation such as industrial composting facilities or recycling. The other advantage is obviously in India, we're yet to deal with the problem of crop waste. Typically, this waste has been traditionally burnt in homes for fuel or in open to clear farmland. For all of us that live in Delhi, we face severe air pollution at least 4 to 5 months of the year. And so this is basically, we thought that we would kill a few birds with one stone and create a product that benefited humanity as well as the environment. Next slide, please. No, the other way. Yeah, great, thank you. Sorry, no, back one. Yeah. So our product range consists of a whole array of trays, cups, bowls. The idea is that we replace the single-use plastic that is used in the food and beverage industry. As I mentioned, our products are made from crop waste. They are 100% natural, biodegradable, and compostable. They don't have any form of lining or coating that you would typically find with the traditional disposable tableware. Also, because of the fibrous strength of the crop, these products can sustain a temperature range from -20 to 180 degrees, so they can be used in the microwave, the oven, and they are easily disposed of. Next slide, please. You would typically find eco-ware anywhere where food is consumed in bulk, from the Indian Railways to various quick service restaurants, to corporates, to zero waste events, and a few B2C outlets as well. Next slide, please. So in the 11-year journey, obviously, we've created a threefold impact that we are extremely proud of. We were ahead of our time when we entered the Indian market, much before any Clean India campaigns. Very few of our stakeholders even understood what it meant for a product to be genuinely biodegradable. And we spent a lot of time creating a market through building education, awareness. And so what we've seen is, like I said, a threefold impact from a health perspective. By reducing your exposure to plastic, you're reducing your exposure to disease. From a societal side of things, we've created an industry that never existed before, and hence jobs. So there's been direct and indirect employment. We've grown from a team of 20 people to 120 people, and 30% of whom are women. From an environmental perspective, just this financial year, we've displaced 125 million pieces of single-use plastic with our products. As I've touched upon, we are backyard biodegradable, and something that we're really proud of is the fact that 100% of our revenues derive from a circular economy model, and we've been recognized for this. The next slide, please. So, these are just a whole array of certification that we have, which is very important to us because anything we claim for eco-ware is backed with a certification, and we're authentic about what we are, how we make, and what we make. And also, I think another thing was that considering we were the first company in India to set out on such a venture, we've actually gone out and created industry standards that didn't exist. Next slide, please. So the future, obviously, single-use plastic is a global problem, and we wish to be a global solution. Also now looking at the post-COVID world where cross-contamination is a huge risk, and the use of disposable is, we're seeing a rise in the use of disposables. We're hoping that people make more sustainable choices, and we are constantly innovating to be part of that. We're also looking at different kinds of feedstock. So one of the things that we've been working on in the last 12 months is to see how much paddy straw that is typically burnt by farmers in the north that we can use as our raw material, and we're working with incubators to create products and go commercial with that. And even though we started off in the food and beverage industry 11 years ago, we're now looking at creating multiple applications across industries. So from medical care to e-commerce packaging. And something that's very close to my heart is unlocking the power of women in manufacturing. So that's something that we work on personally at eco-ware. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Ria. We actually don't have time for questions, so although I know there are some questions which have come up, but we'll just quickly move on to the next speaker. And because we want to keep to the time as much as possible. After this, we have this signing ceremony, and after that, if we still have time, we'll see if we can find the time for some questions and answers. So over to you, Shashank Nemkar. He's going to make us a presentation on what his company does, Arth Tattva. So Shashank is the eco-designer and founder of Arth Tattva. Over to you, Shashank.
Thank you, Anil. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So Arth Tattva was actually my graduation project at NID for my master's program. And so this is a journey about how a classroom project turned into a venture. And the idea actually came to me when we visited some industries as a part of our course, to visit industries and see how they function. And there, as we could see in the next slide, it's a plethora of industrial waste, post-processing waste that were just lying around on the roadside. And what we see right now is hardly the tip of the iceberg, because as we know, ceramic, once fired, it doesn't biodegrade at all. It remains as it is. And that is what archaeology is based on. We excavate and we find these centuries-old clay utensils and idols. And today, industries are facing serious issues about what to do with their production waste. So if we consider just one production cluster in India, since past 50 years of production, they have accumulated a waste that would be as equal to 18-story building as big as a football field. So that's how much amount of waste we have just from one cluster. Now imagine how much of waste we have already generated from so many clusters just in India and around the world. So we have tried to make a recycled material from this waste that we have from industries. And in the next slide, we would be able to see that how these affect all three different stakeholders. So first is the environment. So we use around 60% of this post-industrial waste as a raw material for our material. And the idea was to be able to make a universal material which could be used by every stakeholder in the production process, to be able to use this material and make their own already existing high aesthetic and high functional value products, but yet have a lower carbon footprint and lower mining for natural resources. So we reduce the mining by 60%, of course, but that also regenerates the soil because it lets the soil breathe in itself. And the industries are happy about their landfilling being productively used. And now the new production waste could be redirected to a productive material usage instead of just landfilling directly. And the consumers, as we know, we have been listening to different speakers, that they are actually willing to use better products which are more friendly towards environment. But due to lack of such options, people are forced to use other products which are not very environment friendly. And this this material is actually tested and proved to be 35% more stronger than our traditional ceramics. So a lot of times people refrain from using ceramics is because they say it's fragile. But then now, because we know that this material is much more stronger, it gives a better edge and a better benefit to the consumers to use this product. And they can actually live their life guilt-free of what their carbon footprint would be based on what products they choose, and without compromising on their lifestyle. And so in the next slide, we'll be able to see how we are turning our process into more circular process from a linear production from the existing industry. So right now we are using just a small % of virgin material from mines, and we start from the dumping of post-industrial waste and pulverize it, and the whole other process remains the same. So by this way, we are able to reduce the processing cost for making this new material. And we also use less energy to fire. So at that high temperatures, even 100 degrees lower firing temperatures make a huge difference in energy consumption. So that ways, we are not just saving energy, we are also reducing the cost for the manufacturing processes. Hence, busting the myth that most of the recycled products are expensive, but we are trying to make it more affordable so that most people can use these and reduce the use of virgin material products. In the next slide, we'll be able to see our product. So, the another myth which the industry faces is that most of the recycled products are not as good looking as they are made from virgin material. But with this material, we are able to make products which look as good as the virgin material, in fact, even better. And we can have any kind of color variation, surface variation with this without using any kind of new additives. And the best part is that because we are using clay itself as a natural binder to reuse this industrial waste, so in the next production cycle, in case if our products get rejected during our process, we are able to reuse them for multiple production cycles. So because right now what we see is that if we use cement, concrete, or resin as a binder to use industrial waste and then make products out of it, we are not able to use them later because these two different materials fuse together and then it's impossible to separate them at the later stage. But because we are working with monomaterial, it helps us at various verticals and to make better products. Yeah, that would be all. Over to you, Anil.
Right. Thank you very much, Shashank. You kept it short and sweet, which is very good. Most welcome, because we are actually trying to, make up for lost time. And before we do anything else, I'd like to actually move on to the next part of this program today, which is the Lead the Green Change campaign. And I'll request my colleague Henriette to kindly, take charge now, because she will be coordinating the signing of the EU Green Pledge with the new signatories. She will also give us a brief background of what this Green Pledge is all about, what is this Lead the Green Change campaign is about. And then we will have a few new organizations signing the Green Change on camera. So this will be a new experience for all of us. Over to you, Henriette.
Thank you very much. I think there is a presentation that if somebody could upload it, it would be very good. But I can just start by telling you that this idea or this movement that we call Lead the Green Change is actually something that started World Environment Day 2 years ago. At that time, we called it a Green Pledge. But last year we took on the motto of Lead the Green Change, and this is then the third consecutive year where we are celebrating this. So we can, I think now, safely say that it's a tradition. So please, next slide. Slide people, can you please change the slide? Thank you very much. So as I said, we started with what we call phase one. Now that we've been in so many lockdowns, I thought we should start talking about phases. So phase one, Lead the Green Change, started in 2018, and it was actually an attempt to get all the EU member states here in India who have their embassies to start greening their own practices. I mean, most embassies live in their own embassies, and they one slide back, please. Live in their own embassies, and they have the opportunity to do a lot of greening measures. Others live in rented embassy facilities, have less opportunities, but still, all our member states shared the idea that they would like really to green their operations here. It was at the same time where the Indian government had just come out with the ban of single-use plastic. And plastic was the focus of the World Environment Day of that year. So we decided that one of the things that we would commit to as 28 member states was that we would no longer have single-use plastic or even plastic bottles in our embassies. And I'm really happy and proud to say that actually succeeded very quickly. At first, we were all really not knowing how to do this, but we had a lot of experience sharing between us, and this is just one of the outcomes of this, what the member states themselves have been doing. Another part of the Green Pledge that they signed up to, so it was basically covering all aspects of their environmental impact, but it also talked about making staff of the embassies aware of these issues, making them committed to do something in their homes with their own communities. We've had campaigns where staff have been handing out cotton shopping baskets instead of plastic bags, and so on, so on. We also decided that we would, when we work with, we organize a lot of conferences, or we used to before we were only online. We used to have a lot of cooperation, and we will have again with different hotels, etc. So we also committed to really all our partners that we work with, that we would bring them on board. So that's what then in the following year led us to actually this motto of lead the green change, because the idea is that we can do something on our own, but we can also influence all the people around us. So this is what this whole thing is about. So last year, when we had the phase 2 launch in 2019 on World Environment Day, we managed to get 17 new partners that signed up to the Green Pledge under this Lead the Green Change campaign. And we had really very varied, yeah, you can see them all here, very varied type of partners. We have hotels, we have civil society, we have governmental institutions, industry associations, so really a broad variety. Universities, a lot of universities signed up last year also. A waste recycler, I can't recognize all the logos now at the short in the short time, but still, so that you get an impression. And actually last year at the end of the event, I announced a competition, because the idea was that then all these signatories would try to get their own, that we could have a multiplier effect, that they could get more people on board. I think unfortunately that has gotten a little bit spoiled by the situation, but we do have some new associations that will join this year, and I think I can already announce that the prize for getting most new signatories on board have to go to Rachna and Reva from GIZ, because I think they have done a good job, and we will still try for next year to see if not all of those who are really now in this Lead the Green Change movement, if we cannot work together to get more people on board. Next slide, please. Takes a long time for the slides to change. I'm sorry about that. Maybe it's just my connection. Deepaksha, can you change the slide, please? Okay, it looks like slides can no longer be changed. Interesting. Anyway, so I will just go with my notes and then hope that the slides will catch up with me at some point. So, so some of the new signatories that we have, actually we've already heard 2 of them speaking here, but I will just take the opportunity to introduce the ones who will be signing the Green Pledge today. Okay, here we go. Now they're also on your screen, so then I don't need my little notes. Okay, so first we have Sahas. Sahas is a non-profit organization that's working in the field of waste management since 2001. And they have been helping building communities across the rural and urban India that manage their waste at source by reducing, reusing, and recycling waste and achieving 90% resource recovery. So Sahas, we're very, very happy to have you on board, and I invite you to bring all your collaborators and community members into the movement by next year. The next signatory is Trash to Cash, which is working on creating recycling using India's heritage craft techniques. They're working by determination towards the goal of carbon neutrality. Byproducts are our raw material is their motto. I just need some little bit of cooling here. So the next we've already heard about EcoWare. You saw the presentation, and I think I don't need to say anything further about why this is important. We have all seen how it looks when there's been a lot of single-use plastic plates and cups in a festival. So let's go away from that. Next slide, please. Next is Earth Tattva, which we also just saw, and I really must say that your products are beautiful, and I hope that there's a link somewhere in the presentation to where I can buy them and put them in my removal. So thank you so much for joining. Next is the Indian Youth Climate Network, which was founded in 2008 as a coalition of young people and youth-oriented organizations that take action on climate change. I think it's a really good signal that we have also people who are more focused on climate change naturally that are joining also into this movement, because there is a lot of the climate change, climate emissions that actually comes from our resource consumption. We are studying exactly how this looks here in India, and I think it's something that could be very interesting to work with this network also to see how can we create this synergies between the climate movement and the resource efficiency and circular economy movement, because ultimately it is part of the same story. And as was already highlighted by my colleague Astrid, it's really very much part of the EU's Green Deal. So, so I think that's really very nice that you have joined us, and thank you very much for that. So next slide, please. Ooh, here's something that is difficult to pronounce. Pugdundy Safaris, which has been keenly engaged in conservation and community development activities, besides its main activity, which is running wildlife lodges. So their lodges are mostly set up in remote location away from regular tourism, and they try to help bring ecotourism into these remote areas. So I hope I will still have a chance to go to one of those. Very much welcome also to you. Then we have Vaxpol Hotels and Resorts, who own a portfolio of boutique wildlife resorts in central and eastern India. They also offer guests a unique opportunity to experience flora, fauna, and culture in the regions where they are present. So they have apparently award-winning, environmentally friendly retreats and are located inside some of the national parks. So very much welcome to you. Next is the Vishal Mega Mart, which is India's largest fashion-led hypermarket chain with over 192 stores and a cumulative trading area of more than 3 billion square feet across 110 cities and towns in India. So I think this is really something that will help bring this Lead the Green Change movement to a next level, because we need to get in touch with those who really produce and sell in bulk and try to see how we can work together. I can already see a nice project together between Natasha from the Netherlands and Vishal Megamart on sustainable textiles. So because this is also one of the ideas of this whole Lead the Green Change, that we try to have our partners to come together. So next slide, please. Coming back to some of the activities that we have done already under the Lead the Green Change movement. Last year on World Environment Day, so well, actually tomorrow, a year ago, we organized an e-waste collection with all our EU member states. So as I said, all the member states signed up and tried to green their embassies. And one of the issues that we discovered when we first started discussing what kind of environmental concerns the different embassies had was that nobody in Delhi really knew how to get rid of their electronic waste. So we decided that we would have an electronic waste collection campaign in connection to World Environment Day. And here you see a few pictures from that. So we had Karo Samba, who is one of the partners of the Lead the Green Change, to drive around with us to all the member states, and we collected a total of 1.6 tons of electric waste. Yeah, 11 embassies participated. So I think we're almost ready to do one again, because I think more and more things come out of the coverage in the different embassies. So this was one activity that we've done. Next slide, please. Some of the activities that some of our partners from the Lead the Green Change campaign, the ones who signed last year, some of the events that they have done. You can see again here, you can't see all of it, but just to highlight some of them, there's Project Mumbai, who are working on cleaning up the beaches and turning some of the collected plastic waste into a sustainable bench, as you can see there. There is the Holy Cow Box, which is a sustainable gift that we have developed together with my friend Savi, and you can see also him and me on an electronic bike on the picture, because we are trying to launch a campaign of electric bike in Delhi, firstly, but hopefully across India. And just a couple of days ago, we had a little ride, which was the most exciting thing I have done for about 11 weeks. So I managed to venture into Delhi on an electric bike. So another great initiative together with Savi. Amrita University have been doing a lot of planting of greenery, a lot of green initiatives, reaching out. Don Bosco University in Assam have been providing water purifiers to 12 villages, and as I already mentioned, the Pluggers of India, the Plugman, has been running marathons, I think a marathon every day across India, and focused on plugging, collecting waste during all this. So these are some of our partners, and it's really, really nice to see all these activities that you have been doing, and I hope that in the next year it will be easier to work together with you. Yes, again, here I can you can see this recycled benches as I talked about. Next slide, please. Here we see a little bit more information about Ripop's running. Stop, you're going far too quick now. Thank you. Amrita University, as I mentioned, waste segregation and putting of different tree species on the campus. Don Bosco University, apart from the water issues that I mentioned, also e-waste management. Project Mumbai, collecting of plastic from the beaches, as I mentioned. Next slide, please. Yes, Amrita University, solar panel installation, a lot of solar panels being installed on the campus, and the Pluggers of India have been plugging since 2017, 500 drives, it says. Yeah, see a lot of plugging and waste collection, and really, really good efforts on the ground. Thank you very much for that. Next slide, please. So this comes to the end of this part of the presentation. So I just wanted to say that, as I mentioned, we're trying to build this as a community, as a campaign, and we would like in the next phase, through the EU Resource Efficiency Initiative, to work more closely with the partners and to see how can we support them. There is a Facebook page, which we call Lead the Green Change, where we are trying to post actively all these things that our partners have been doing, and we will be doing that increasingly in the next phase. So all these good initiatives will be mentioned there, and that also goes to the description of the existing and the new signatories. So all of you, even if I gave you now a very rough and brief introduction, you can be assured that you will be put there, and we will try to do our best to make these connections and put you together with all the other people so that we can jointly lift this together. So now I think we have come to the formal signing ceremony. It's a virtual signing, so it's not exactly as we normally would have done it last year. My hand was in cramp for several days afterwards for all this signing. So if I can ask you, all the new signatories, to please turn on your cameras. And then, so I think some of you have a piece of signed pledge. If you have it, you are welcome to hold it up. Thank you, that looks beautiful. Others of you have decided not to have that because it's actually more sustainable not to have it, and you're also very welcome to do that. So thank you to all of you, and I promise that I will physically or virtually sign in the very near future when we can get together in the real life. Do we have all the new signatories? I think not yet, no? Are there a few that has already gone missing?
I can't, Natalia.
Excuse me? So if you would like the new signatories, you would like to just say your name. Those who've already spoken, you don't need to do it again. But I would very much like the other. I will start with Sonia, please. If you just introduce yourself very briefly.
Good evening, good afternoon.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thanks. It's great to be a part of this complete initiative, and I have already been working in solid waste management, and working towards circular economy. So just to tell you, this initiative, we've all used recycled paper. That's something that we keep using in our organization. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much and welcome on board. Do we have Dr. Puri from Trash to Cash here with us? I don't see. Okay, never mind. Everywhere we've already used them. The Youth Climate Network, Raka Agitok.
Hi, hello. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm very thankful for European Union and the GIZ for always supporting us and giving us a platform for the youth voice. Thank you, and I look forward to this collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have Akanksha. Would you like to say something, please?
Yes. Hello, thank you so much for having me and our company here. We have been my name is Akanksha Garg, and I started a company in the Sundarbans back in 2004, and we are the first sustainable property there. We have no electricity, no fresh water. We've been completely dependent on rainwater harvesting and solar from day one. And I would like to thank GIZ and Terry for having us here, and the EU as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Are there any other new signatories that are still online? We have gone far over our time, but that's always the case, whether we are virtual or non-virtual. So it doesn't seem to be the case, but nonetheless, they are still on board, and I'm sure they have signed one way or another. So with this word, I think we have done the formal signature ceremony for the Lead the Green Change campaign of 2020, and welcome to all of you. And I reiterate my competition for next year. So there will be good prizes if you get other people on board. I can promise. Okay, so Anil, I think we have about 10 minutes for questions. And we still have some of our panelists from the technical session on board. So if I could give it over to you for if there are any questions, we could finalize with that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Henriette. I will just take a moment to look at the chat box and see if there are any questions which panelists may wish to answer.
Maybe I can start with one question while you're looking. There is a question here. Is any certification mechanism in place for plastic credits from both recycling and recovery operations, which are transactable on the lines of carbon credits? So that's a difficult question. So I think I should pose it to Rachna or Shobik.
Yeah, no, I think this would be better if this was after EcoWare, like Ria mentioned it, but I think currently I'm not aware of anything which is looking at trading with regard to recyclable plastics. Yeah.
Okay, Shobik, do you have any information on this? We cannot hear you.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, again, like same as what Rachna shared, not that I'm aware of, but definitely we would expect something to happen in the future if that's a kind of an area possibly will come up.
Okay, thank you. So I have another question to maybe to all the 5 panelists. So you've seen in the presentations from Rachna and Shobik what we have been working on since 2007 and up to today in this EU Resource Efficiency Initiative. I think you all have other materials, other sectors that you are working on. the government has certain key priorities for the next coming phase. We are about to enter into the phase 2 of the Resource Efficiency Initiative, and as Astrid, my colleague, was mentioning, we are hoping to have a joint declaration on a partnership on resource efficiency and circular economy signed between the EU and India at highest level in our next summit. So we are right now on the lookout for different ideas for what should we actually be working on. So I think textile would be an obvious choice, but any ideas on what are actually the important sectors? I mean, Shovik had some data on what are these sectors that we have been working on, what are their share of the economy. Of course, it's interesting to look at the sectors that has a big share of the economy, but it's also interesting to look at the sectors where there are huge opportunities. So, so what is your take on this?
Maybe I can just share a short comment. Yeah, I think first of all, obviously, it's a big priority to work on sectors which are a large part of a country's economy, as you've chosen in the past, but also looking into what Astrid mentioned in this new circular economy action plan within the EU. There are certain key sectors that we could look at, and one of them is textiles, but obviously you also have ICT, electronics, construction, and also food and agri-food. So just maybe, yeah, from a consumption perspective, also to look at other sectors might be relevant.
Thank you very much. Shashank, anything you would like to add to this?
Yeah, something similar, because apart from textiles, electronic waste and food waste is something which everyone in the society contributes to, not just the industrial sector. And yes, we all face issues about how to dispose of our electronic waste. So probably that could be a major collaboration and then a major help to everyone included.
Maybe Henriette, can I come in here?
Yes, please, sure.
Yeah. So the sector that, thank you so much for this idea. So definitely that's going to help us taking some of these sectors and working on some of the existing sectors in a better detail. But I feel that one sector which in a way we have touched upon, but I feel there's a lot of scope to work on is the tourism sector. While you have like a bigger establishments offering facilities to the high-end consumers, but we do have a number of these medium and small scale establishments providing these boarding and lodging facilities to millions on a daily basis. So that's an opportunity, in fact, wherein we can actually work at a proper way, trying to understand what will be the role of the areas, what kind of investments, and what kind of existing knowledge and experiences we can, in fact, use to make that sector more sustainable.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are coming very close to the time where we will be kicked out of the virtual meeting room. So, Anil, would you like to just hand over the virtual flowers?
Well, thank you very much to everybody, and this has been such an interesting and exciting experience sitting in this virtual celebration of the World Environment Day. I wish we had, got together on in a more happy overall global context, and we were not forced by the global circumstances to do this online. But that's where we are. But we made the best use of this. We had very high-level speakers from the Government of India and from the European Union side. And then we had very relevant, very appropriate technical presentations in the last session. So it's been an afternoon of interesting conversations and meaningful purpose. Thank you very much to everybody who has participated in this. Big warm welcome to all the new signatories of the EU's Green Pledge, Lead the Green Change. And I think this is only going to keep growing further. We started 2 years ago on a small scale, as Henriette said. We added a few members last year. We would have added many more this year had the lockdown not been there. But despite the lockdown, we've been able to at least carry on the process. And next year, we'll kind of continue this, probably, hopefully upscale this. So big thank you to all the speakers, to all the panelists, to all the participants who have been participating, who have been listening in patiently. And thank you to all my colleagues who have been working in the background, colleagues from the EU Resource Efficiency Initiative Project, colleagues from the EU Public Diplomacy and Outreach Project, colleagues from TERI. And thank you very much. This has been also shown live. So if any of your friends have missed this, you can always refer them to the Facebook page of the EU delegation, where the recording of this will be available, and they can always go back and refer to this particular discussion. So with those virtual flowers, thank you very much. And Harriet, is this a good time to say bye now? Is there anything else?
I think this is a good time to say goodbye. Phir milenge.
Phir milenge. All right. Namaste. Phir milenge. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thanks so
Thank you.
much.
See you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.